There are 298 prisoners on death row in the state of Florida. This is part 6 of the series. Melvin Trotter, 63 years old, 36 years on death row. Trotter disemboweled Virgie Langford, the owner of a grocery shop, on June 16, 1986, after stabbing her 6 times in the right side and once in the left. On that day, Trotter was seen rushing away from the Langford's store, according to Eleanora Oates' testimony. Trotter inquired about the availability of crack cocaine from Oates. Oates accompanied Trotter as he purchased the drugs and afterwards went with him to his mother's house. The day was spent watching television and using substances. That afternoon, Trotter had tied money and food stamps in a red bandana, and Oates assisted him in counting them. Trotter explained to Oates that he was given the cash and food stamps in exchange for working. After the assault, Langford was discovered by a truck driver still alive. When questioned, Langford was able to provide details about the attacker, describing him as a short black male with a Tropicana Steph ID. After being taken to the hospital and having a surgery, the victim later passed away from a cardiac arrest as a result of the injuries. Both the victims' and witnesses' descriptions of Trotter were accurate. Police specifically asked about a Tropicana employee called Melvin after seeing the employee identification tag. Trotter's handprint was also discovered on the meat refrigerator. Later, the authorities discovered a t-shirt at Trotter's house with a blood stain that matched the blood type of the victim. James Daly, 77 years old, 36 years on death row. In the gruesome 1985 Florida killing of 14-year-old Shelley Boggio, Daly was found guilty. She had 31 stab wounds when she was discovered naked in a canal. Most of the injuries were to her hands, which the authorities believe were caused by her attempt to defend herself. She was probably still alive when she was pulled into the river and left to die, according to a medical examiner. According to his lawyers, there is no physical or forensic evidence linking Daly to the homicide. Daly's roommate, Jack Piercy, was a person of interest in the investigation at the time of the murder. He admitted that he at least once stabbed the girl, but Daly was the one who murdered her. Piercy signed a declaration saying he acted alone in the death of Boggio, but later recanted. The document stated, "James Daly had nothing to do with the murder of Shelley Boggio. I committed the crime alone. James Daly was back at the house when I drove Shelley Boggio to the place where I ultimately killed her." William Reeves, 75 years old, 31 years on death row. On September 23, 1986, Deputy Sheriff Richard Rakowski responded to a 911 call made from a Zippy Mart convenience store payphone close to Vero Beach. Reeves claimed that the reason he made the call was because he lacked the funds to call a cab. To hire a taxi and find out if William Reeves had any outstanding warrants, the deputy also dialed 911. Reeves said that while he and the deputy were waiting for the cab, a revolver accidentally dropped out of his pants. The deputy stepped on Reeves' hands as he attempted to grab the gun. After a struggle, Reeves managed to get the gun away from the deputy by holding him by the throat. Deputy Sheriff stepped away from Reeves, asking him not to kill him, and then he turned and ran. The deputy was shot 4 times in the back by Reeves as he was running. The witness who located the deputy claimed to have seen a black male sprinting away while wearing red shorts and a white t-shirt. Later in the morning, the deputy passed away. Dominic OKeefe, 78 years old, 36 years on death row. On June 10, 1986, early in the morning, Ochikonne woke up his ex-girlfriend Anita Gerety by banging on the slide glass door to her bedroom. She lived there with her parents, Raymond and Martha Artzner, and her kids. After Gerety declined to speak with him, Ochikonne walked away but later came back with a weapon. After cutting the outside telephone wires, Ochikonne awoke the family. Gerety Artzner's father confronted him outdoors and Ochikonne shot him. While Gerety and her daughter were trying to escape the house, he entered the home and then shot Martha Artzner, Gerety's mother, 4 times. Dennis Sokor, 71 years old, 36 years on death row. Dennis Sokor was found guilty of murdering Patricia Gifford and given the death penalty. His brother, Gary Sokor, testified that on New Year's Eve of 1981, he and Dennis met Patricia Gifford, the victim, at a bar. Gary reported that while he waited in the pickup outside the lounge, Dennis and Gifford were kissing. Gifford consented to go to breakfast with Gary and Dennis. Gary stated that Dennis had driven to a remote location in the truck while the victim was seated between the brothers. Dennis then brought the car to a stop. Gary asserted that Dennis assaulted Gifford while she yelled for help and that he attempted to intervene to halt the assault but was directed to return to the truck. After some time, Dennis returned to the truck as well and they drove home. Gary discovered a woman's shoe, sweatshirt, and set of keys in Dennis's truck the following morning. The keys were concealed by him. Gary noticed later that the shoe and sweater had been taken off and that the truck had been cleaned. Dennis requested the keys, so Gary gave them to him. A few days later, Gary went back to Michigan. At the trial, a female friend of the victim who had gone to the lounge with Gifford gave testimony. She claimed that they celebrated New Year's Eve in the lounge. The friend fell ill in the middle of the night, and Gifford helped her to her car with the Sokor brothers' assistance. The following morning, Gifford's companion got out of bed, noticed that Gifford was gone, and dialed 911. A picture of Gifford and an unidentified male from that night was found by the police. The image was shown on television, and according to testimony from Dennis Sokor's roommates, when he saw the image of himself at the pub with the victim, Sokor swiftly departed. Gary Sokor was questioned by the police when they learned that he had recently moved back to Michigan. Gary claimed to the police that Gifford's disappearance was the fault of Dennis Sokor. He also consented to go back to Florida and assist in locating the body. However, the body of the victim was never discovered by the police. After being detained in Georgia on unrelated charges, Dennis Sokor was sent also back to Florida. John Freeman, 60 years old, 35 years on death row. On November 11, 1986, Leonard Collier discovered John Freeman breaking into his house. A neighbor overheard the two fighting over the rifle and also heard a gunshot. The neighbor saw Collier attempt to crawl away from the attack while Freeman took hold of the rifle and struck him repeatedly. Collier was hit 10 to 12 times in the head, but didn't have any bullet wounds. He eventually passed away as a result of his injuries. Later, Freeman was discovered hiding beneath a wharf and arrested by authorities. Richard Anderson, 75 years old, 35 years on death row. Anderson was found guilty and given the death penalty for the murder of Robert Grantham on May 7, 1987. Connie Beasley, Anderson's girlfriend, apparently received from Robert Grantham an offer for a large quantity of money in exchange for a night together. Beasley informed Anderson of Grantham's offer after rejecting it. Anderson assumed Grantham was wealthy and was aware that he would be bringing his earnings back from a gaming trip to Las Vegas. Beasley was told by Anderson to agree to spend one night with Grantham in exchange for $10,000. She was also instructed to get Grantham drunk so that Anderson could rob him later. After dinner and a few beers, Beasley took Grantham to Anderson's apartment. Later that evening, Anderson showed up at the flat under the pretext that he needed a ride home after returning Beasley's car. Anderson requested that Beasley ride with them, and Grantham consented to drive him. From the back seat of the car, Anderson fatally shot Grantham 4 times in the head. He then dumped the body in a forested location. When Grantham was shot, Connie Beasley was seated on the front passenger's side. At the Tampa International Airport, Anderson abandoned Grantham's vehicle and took Beasley back to his apartment. Anderson and Beasley searched Grantham's possessions but only came up with $2,600. Jerry Halliburton, 69 years old, 35 years on death row. On August 9, 1981, while on parole, Jelly Halliburton broke into Donald Bohannon's home and stabbed him 31 times in the neck, chest, arms, and private parts. Bohannon died as a result. Halliburton was detained by the police after the crime was committed, and when a lawyer was hired, he was not permitted to speak with Halliburton. Halliburton underwent a polygraph test while being questioned. The interrogation was halted until a court order was secured, allowing the lawyer to speak with Halliburton. The defendant allegedly admitted to killing Bohannon because he just wanted to test his ability to kill another person. Paul Johnson, 74 years old, 35 years on death row. In a night-long spree that started just after midnight on January 9, 1981, when a dispatcher overheard a stranger's voice over a taxicab's radio stating that cab driver William Evans had been knocked unconscious, Johnson was found guilty of killing 3 people. Evans had been shot twice in the head, his wallet and fare money were missing, and his cab had been set on fire when his body was discovered in a grove 5 days later. Johnson requested a ride from Ray Beasley and his friend Amy Reed at 3 a.m. on January 9 so he could use the restroom. Johnson wanted them to stop along a lonely section of Drainfield Road. Johnson was convicted of shooting Beasley on the side of the road, and when Reed fled in the car to call for help, Johnson fatally shot Deputy Theron A. Burnham 3 times with his own service revolver after he responded to Reed's call. Johnson was arrested the following day after telling friends he had shot a deputy. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.